Well, Pitt needed a big win on Tuesday night against North Carolina at the Peterson Event Center, and that is exactly what Pitt got. Now, that's not the best North Carolina team we've ever seen put on those uniforms. It's not the best North Carolina team we've ever seen walk into the Peterson Event Center. I don't know if you know, did you realize, I didn't realize that Sean May coaches for Carolina. I don't know if that just started this year or if he's been there for a little while. He doesn't look like he could walk on the court, but, metaphorically speaking, Sean May is not walking through that door. That's a very different kind of Carolina team, even from the ones that we've seen in the last few years, let alone those years when Carolina was really, really good. That wasn't the case. But shout out to Sean May. He was awesome to watch when he was at Carolina, and hope his coaching career's going well so far. But this is not the best Carolina team we've seen. It doesn't matter, though, because that was a game on Tuesday night that Pitt absolutely had to win. That was a game on Tuesday night that was crucial for Pitt's resume, crucial for the Panthers' NCAA tournament hopes, and just really important in a lot of ways. They have the 4-game losing streak. They break it with a win at Syracuse. And to follow it up with a win against North Carolina at the Peterson Event Center to get a little bit of a winning streak going, get a little bit of a positive momentum going, huge. Just absolutely huge. And leaves us with, I think, a lot of things to talk about. We got a lot to discuss from that game on Tuesday night. Obviously, Zach Austin shows up right there on the screen. His performance was outstanding. Zach Austin, all he does is win, no matter what. He just makes winning plays. Not to mention what the rest of the guys on the team did. Jalen Lowe was huge in the first half, had a big run at the end of the half to get Pitt back in that game and make sure that it was going to be a competitive one in the second half. Ishmael Leggett had a big game, made a lot of free throws. Austin, like I said, was awesome. Cam Corrin did some really good things. Damian Dunn did some good things. They got a lot of positive contributions that they needed to win that game on Tuesday night. And which is good because they needed to win that game on Tuesday night. We got a lot to talk about here today. The individual contributions, some of the big adjustments that we saw, some of the trends that are emerging that are positive, some of the trends that are emerging that used to be negative but might be turning into positives, some of the things that probably just aren't going to get better, and that's okay because maybe this team can overcome some of them. We'll talk about the resume. We'll talk about the NCAA tournament hopes, what lies ahead. We got a lot of hoops to talk about, so let's dive into it here on the Thursday edition of the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I like these Thursday morning pits. Obviously we do the mailbag on Friday, so that one's just kind of scripted out by you guys and what you want to talk about. So these Thursday ones are kind of like my final statement of the week. If there's something I really want to say or talk about, this is the time to get it out and sort of lay it all out there. Fortunately for us, there's a lot to talk about with this Pitt basketball team. I suppose if I wanted to open the Friday show and just get something off my chest, I could do that and then jump into the mailbag questions. But most often what happens is we just go right for the questions and let you guys decide the topics and have that conversation. That's always a lot of fun to do the mailbag. There's still time to get questions in for the mailbag edition of the Morning Pitt. So if you go to Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, you go to the Between Fifth and Forbes message board. You can post your questions in our mailbag thread there. We had some questions that we were left over at the end of last week. Questions that kind of came in late after we had already recorded the mailbag. So we're going to get those this week. And then we got new questions coming in this week. We'll dive into all of it. Pitt football, basketball, recruiting, transfer portal, anything you want to talk about. It's all right there in the Morning Pitt mailbag. So jump in there, post your questions, and we'll answer as many as we can tomorrow. And then, of course, what we always ask you to do, like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That way you won't miss any of our Pitt video content, whether it's these daily Morning Pitt videos, our weekly live show that we do every Wednesday night at 8:30. We did it last night. Me and Jim Hammett get together with you and talk a little bit of Pitt sports, which is always a lot of fun. We have conversation back and forth, and there's certainly a lot to talk about right now. And press conferences, interviews. We have all that stuff right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You want to make sure you don't miss any of it. Like the video, subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So Pitt beats North Carolina. You would think I would have the score right in front of me, 73-65. I had to remember what the final score was. And this was a game like so many games we've seen Pitt play, some that ended up as wins and some that ended up as losses. This was a game, like so many others, where Pitt was behind for a good portion of the game. Actually, they led for less than 10 minutes in this game on Tuesday night. Carolina held the lead for almost 27 minutes, and Pitt's lead was like 9 minutes and 56 seconds or something. Now, of course, the important thing is that they held the lead at the end. The important thing is that they took the lead late in the game and held on to it. Took the lead with 2.5 minutes left to go and held on to that lead, to secure the victory. But they played from behind virtually the entire game. This was a game where they were down 10 in the first half, which seems to be a trend. Somebody posted, and I haven't gone, I should have researched this before regurgitating it, but feels true enough to be true, that that Pitt has trailed by at least 9 in the first half of every ACC game so far this season. Again, I didn't look that up to find out, but it passes the smell test, and if it's not true, then it's at least probably no fewer than 7 or 8 of their 9 ACC games so far this year. They've fallen behind. They've fallen behind every game, it seems like. And in games like Duke or Louisville or Clemson or Florida State, they've been unable to dig themselves out of that hole. They were able to dig out of the hole, trailing at halftime at Syracuse last Saturday, and they were able to dig out of the hole trailing at halftime against North Carolina on Tuesday night. Now, this was a game where they were down 10, like I said, and the 10-point lead for Carolina was with like 2 minutes and 12 seconds left to go in the first half. Of course, we know what happened after that. Jalen Lowe took over. He drove to the basket for a hoop, got a steal when R.J. Davis slipped and fell. Lowe went the other way and nailed a 3, and then one more steal. Ishmael Leggett got a steal on the next North Carolina possession. Brought it up the court, got it to Lowe for another 3. Jalen Lowe went on his own little 8-0 run to end the first half to get Pitt within 2 points after trailing by 10 literally like a minute earlier. So pretty good little comeback. And then, in the second half, it was just a matter of chipping away. And they still didn't really have many leads. In the second half, Zach Austin's monster dunk with like 12 and a half minutes to go tied the game at 52. Pitt had trailed up until that point in the second half. Actually, no, they had a 1-point lead, 50-49, about 4 or 5 minutes into the half. Then Carolina went back on top. Austin hit that huge dunk to tie the game, and then Guillermo Diaz-Graham made a 3 to put Pitt up by 3. But then Carolina chipped away, got back in front, and more or less stayed in front until you got into the final 2.5 minutes. That final 2.5 minutes, Lowe led a fast break, kicked out to Zach Austin. Austin made the 3, and Pitt took the lead for good in those final 2.5 minutes. But a game, again, where this team is playing from behind. And there's probably conversation to be had about how, they're not – you can't get away with that against the good teams. They couldn't get away with it against Duke, against Louisville, against Clemson, against Florida State. And chances are they won't be able to get away with it against Wake Forest on Saturday or when they play at Louisville later in the season. They have a couple of these sort of more challenging games. But the truth is, even if you play, when they have some of these bad games at home, Virginia at home, Miami at home, Syracuse at home, Georgia Tech at home, Boston College at home, those are all games that, quad 3, quad 4 games that Pitt absolutely has to win to keep their perfect record against the bottom end teams intact. But the reality is, if you fall behind like this every night, you're playing with fire, and it'll certainly catch up with you against, when you're at Wake Forest, you're at SMU, you're at Louisville, potentially Notre Dame, potentially NC State. But it could also, that's how you end up blowing a game that you should win. Like one of these, 4 or 5 remaining home games that are all quad 3 and quad 4 games. You blow those games by falling behind by a lot in the first half and not being able to overcome it. That's something Pitt's going to have to keep working on, is getting stronger starts. However, there is something to be said for the fact that they have played from behind so often and found ways to come back and win. That they trailed at Syracuse and didn't fold despite being on the road. That they trailed against North Carolina and did not fold, even though they were down 10 in the first half. And I think, there were some significant, they trailed by significant amounts in the, in the second half as well. They were down 4 with about 6.5 minutes to go. I mean, like they were behind. And there's something to be said for being in those situations, not folding, and being able to make the plays to get back in the game. And while we can talk a lot, and we will talk a lot about Zach Austin making 2 threes in the final 5 minutes that helped Pitt, win that game, or some of the other offensive plays that Pitt was able to pull off to get the victory, the biggest thing that happened here in that game on Tuesday night was Pitt's defense in the second half. And defense in the second half has been a big problem. When you look at the 4-game losing streak, that Pitt had with Duke and Louisville and Florida State and Clemson, Duke shot 61% in the second half of that game. Louisville shot 51.5% in the second half. Florida State was 58.3%. Clemson was only 42.1% in the second half. Those are just the second half shooting percentages. Like, when you dig yourself a hole, particularly against teams like Duke and Louisville and even Florida State on the road or Clemson, you need to play really well on offense and defense to come back, to dig out of that hole. Giving up 60% shooting, 58% shooting, 52% shooting, even 42% shooting, like, that's not giving yourself much of a chance, because then you've got to be that much better offensively in order to execute the comeback. And so they didn't give themselves much of a chance in those games. They dug a hole in the first half and then just, didn't defend very well in the second half. Now, you compare that to these last two games, the games that they won at Syracuse and home against North Carolina. In the second half, Syracuse was at 37.8%, which I tend to generally think that if you can hold a team under 40% shooting, you played pretty well defensively, or they just missed a lot. North Carolina shot 31% after halftime, scored just 21 points in the second half. Now, this is after North Carolina scored 44 points in the first half. So literally cut their scoring in half. Only gave up 9 field goals, only allowed them to shoot 1 of 11 from 3, and again, held them to 31% shooting. That's huge. As big as anything that came out, or as much as anything that came out of Tuesday night's game, I think that defensive turnaround, that defensive improvement, and that defensive performance are some of the biggest things that Pitt can and needs to carry forward going into the rest of the ACC schedule here, the final 11 games that they've got in the regular season. And there's a lot that went into that turnaround. There's a lot that sort of changed. Zach Austin said the one thing the coaches did at halftime was they, had the players start switching on screens, which they weren't doing all that much in the first half. And, initially you would think, well, I don't know if that's a great idea, because you're going to get Cam Corrin trying to defend RJ Davis, but it actually worked really well. Davis only attempted 4 2-point shots in the second half. Now, he made 2 of those 4, but only getting 4 attempts for Carolina's lead point guard, their number 1 guy, who played all 20 minutes of the second half, to only attempt 4 2-point field goals. He had 7 total shot attempts in the second half. 3 of them were 3-pointers. The other 4 were inside the arc. That's a testament. Like set the shooting percentage aside, that he made 2 of 4 from inside the arc. Oh, he shot 50% in the second half. Set that aside. This is one of those cases where the field goal attempts tell a big part of the story. And at least a decent portion of that second half saw Cam Corrin defending RJ Davis, and RJ Davis thinking he could take Cam Corrin off the dribble. And he got around him sometimes. But Cam Corrin put up a real fight and made life very difficult for RJ Davis. That's huge. I think that's really big. We all have questions and comments and thoughts and opinions on Cam Corrin's defense. And quite frankly, I don't think it's been great, particularly in the post and in the paint. But if he can do that, if he can switch on screens and defend a guard the way he defended RJ Davis on Tuesday night, that's huge for Pitt. I think there's already strength in this backcourt defensively. Damian Dunn, obviously, Ishmael Leggett, I think are the 2 best defenders on this team. But a team like Carolina that's going to roll out all those guards, I mean, they basically played 4 guards all night long because their front court's not very good to begin with, and then Jalen Washington was out with an injury, so it got even worse and thinner. But to play against a team that rolls out that much in the backcourt, that has that many guards on the court, Dunn and Leggett can only do so much. To have Corrin be able to step up and take the switches like that, that's impressive. That's something you potentially can build on. You hope. You'd like to think that you'll get some steps forward in that regard. We'll have longer conversations about Cam Corrin in the center position. We've had unendingly long conversations about Cam Corrin and Guillermo Diaz-Graham in the center position, and I'll set that aside for now. The only thing I would say is that, Corrin, I think, is still a good scoring option. I think he's producing on offense. I think he's able to finish around the rim better than any center Pitt has had in the last few years. He's not a perfect player. I think he still leaves something to be desired when it comes to the rebounding. And, his post defense isn't great, but I think you knew you were going to get a drop off in the post defense from Federico to Cam Corrin. But I think he's still a good offensive option. I'm still of the mind that a more equal share of minutes at the 5 between Corrin and Guillermo would probably be ideal. But in a game where I don't think the center position, I mean, obviously the center position didn't cost them the game because they ultimately won. I also don't think it was, it wasn't a huge factor. Corrin made some big buckets. He had a big basket late in the game with about a minute left to go, extended the lead from 2 to 4, which was very significant. He also made some free throws. And like I say, that defense that he played in the second half was all pretty good. But it sort of feels like after that game, there was we all built it up so much and had so much discussion about the center position leading into that game on Tuesday night. But then it didn't feel like as big of a factor as, some other things that ultimately determined that game. Zach Austin is definitely one of those things that determined that game. For him to go out with 15 points and 5 blocks, and did he have 3 steals? What did he end up with? No, he didn't have any steals. Why did I think he had 3 steals? Jalen Lowe had 3 steals. Jalen Lowe had 18.6 rebounds, 7 assists, and 3 steals. That's pretty solid stuff. Austin had 3 rebounds, but he had the 5 blocks. And the blocks were largely what I thought was really interesting about Zach Austin's blocks is, he wasn't just like meeting a guy at the rim, and winning, by the backboard or something like that, rim protection. I mean, he was blocking jump shots. He was just out jumping the jump shooter and swatting the ball away. It was just an impressive display from Zach Austin. The soaring dunk, the big blocks, 2 huge threes in the final 5 minutes. Just a monster game. And like, this is like Zach Austin, right? Like, he's not going to be, a central focus in the offense. When they run offense, they're not usually running plays that, to set up Zach Austin for a shot outside of maybe a 3-pointer, which incidentally, he's made more, and this kind of illustrates it, he's made more 3-pointers than 2-pointers this year. I think he's got like 37 made 3s and like only 20-some made 2-pointers. And so it's just what his game is. And we talked about it last year. We talked about the Zach Austin chaos points that like seemed like most of his baskets came in transition or fast breaks or offensive rebound putbacks or, just loose ball situations. Chaos. Zach Austin thrives in chaos. He's that guy who, when everything is sort of breaking down, he comes out of nowhere and either hits a big block on the defensive end or slams in a putback or something like that, or drains a 3 when everything's sort of breaking down, second chance opportunities, that kind of thing. I mean, that's what he is, and that's what he does. He's added the 3-point shot as more of a threat in his arsenal now than I think it's ever been in his career. Although he shot a lot of 3s, I think his first year at High Point. And so that has given him a little bit more of a role in the set offense, but ultimately he's just going to be a guy who does things. Like, I don't know a better way to say it than Zach Austin just does things. He makes winning plays. And it was Tuesday night against North Carolina with his, in the final 5 minutes, he has 2 3s and 2 blocks. It was at Syracuse where he, knocked down. He hit the 2 3-pointers in the final 10 seconds. He had a dunk in the final 25 seconds. Made a couple plays there. And then obviously the Ohio State game when he hits the buzzer beater. I mean, like, he just makes these like winning plays that are kind of in the structure of the offense and they're kind of not. And he just sort of exists out there to appear out of nowhere and make a big time play. That's what Zach Austin is. And that's what he does. And it's exciting to watch. It'd be nice if he could be a little bit more a part of the offense. It'd be nice if he could be a little bit more of a focal point, but I don't know. He's kind of got a role now, particularly as he's developed as a 3-point shooter. Now he's got a real kind of ground, like that's the most grounded role he's had in a year and a half plus at Pitt. He didn't really have kind of a grounded set role last year. His emergence as a legitimate 3-point shooter this year, and an efficient shooter and a dangerous shooter from outside, like that has given him a little bit of grounding, but he still operates outside. He operates outside the realm of sort of the traditional offense, I guess. But he makes plays and he wins games. Jalen Lowe, obviously I read that stat line, 18, 7, and 6, plus 3 steals. He had 15 points in the first half, 8 in that run to end the first half. It was a game of runs with Pitt and North Carolina. Carolina went on a big run. Pitt went on a big run, back and forth, ending with that 8-0 run for Pitt at the end of the first half. There were big runs in the second half. Carolina started the second half on a big run, and then Pitt went on a big run, and it sort of went back and forth like that as well. Overall, I mean, it was a good performance. Overall, I think they did a lot of things well. I think they played better in that game on Tuesday night than they did in the win at Syracuse. I think it was one of the better games they've played in ACC play this year. And I think there were things that they can take forward from that. I think this 3-guard offense and how each of these guards sort of fit in and work together keeps coming more and more into focus. I think the guards are good defenders. I think the defense is going to be up and down, but it can make little improvements here and there as the season goes on. I'm not sure the rebounding is ever really going to get that much better. I mean, Pitt just keeps getting rebounded. They've been out-rebounded in the last 6 games. They got out-rebounded on Tuesday night against North Carolina by like 10. They got out-rebounded by Syracuse by 17. Obviously, they got out-rebounded in the 4 losses. I'm not sure how much better that can get, but I think they can keep playing well offensively. I think they can keep improving defensively. And then they've got a number of guys who I think can step up and make winning plays, whether it's Lowe or Leggett or Austin. Damian Dunn can make game-winning plays. Guillermo can make winning shots. Korn can make winning. I mean, they've got a number of guys who can make winning plays, and they might only have 5 or 6 of them. And that's pretty much all that you saw on the court on Tuesday night. You didn't see Brandon Cummings. You didn't see Papa Amadou Kanti. You didn't see Amsal Delilich. And really, I mean, you only saw Jorge Diaz-Graham for a little bit. I don't know if that even really counts. He only played a few minutes. But those top 6 guys, which we thought maybe this would be the year they would go a little bit deeper. But those top 6 guys can make winning plays. And they have. And they did it on Tuesday night to get a huge win. All right, we got our mailbag tomorrow, leading into Pitt at Wake Forest on Saturday at noon. Going to be another huge game. That's a big game opportunity. Like the Carolina game was important. A lot of times quad 1, quad 2 get sort of lumped together. You want to stay undefeated in the quad 2 games. Certainly want to stay undefeated in the quad 3, quad 4 games. And Pitt has done a great job of that so far. I think they're 13-0 against quad 2, quad 3, and quad 4. Now there's a chance on Saturday to go get a big win, a quad 1 win, which Pitt winning it might knock Wake Forest out of the quad 1. So maybe it'll go from a quad 1 game to a quad 2 game if Pitt wins. But nevertheless, it's a chance for a big game, a conference win on the road. It's right there for Pitt. They've got a 2-game winning streak. They've got momentum. They're showing that they can do some of the things they need to do to win games. Can they get it done on Saturday? We'll see. But whatever happens, we will be talking about it right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So make sure you like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check out the website, Panther-Lair.com. And I hope it's been a great week for you so far. My guess is after that win on Tuesday night, you're feeling pretty good. So enjoy your Thursday. Have a great week as it comes wrapping up. We'll catch you tomorrow for the Morning Pitt mailbag and see what's going on. Didn't really stick the landing on that episode, but it's all right. Felt like it was pretty good up until that point. All right, like and subscribe. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.